Hey, what's up, Mortgage Coach and Trust Engine community? I am interviewing Brian Hale again. This is a monthly thing that we've done for, I think, 5 straight months. Brian, is
I
this
think
our
so.
fifth one?
I think so.
Yeah, so thank you, Brian. For anyone that is either new to the industry or new to our community, Brian Hale is one of the all-time great CEOs in the mortgage industry. He's been the leader of some of the biggest platforms in the mortgage business, chief sales officer, CEO. Once upon a time, he was also one of America's top mortgage professionals. So he knows every seat on the bus in mortgage. He now is coaching and consulting a lot of C-suites. When you hear of all the M&A things that are happening in the marketplace, Brian is on one side or the other of many of those transactions and talking to more executives than anyone I know. So every month we're coming in and we're bringing what are some of the top topics in mortgage news, real estate news, and then I always like to focus on, and how is that an opportunity? So if you're a loan officer, we're going to translate like, how should you be integrating that into your conversations with realtors? How should you be integrating some of this market news into your borrower and your buyer consultations? So Brian, welcome, brother.
Thank you, David. Always great to be with you and your entire audience. You have a huge, very productive following out there using a lot of your tools. And I also appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and them here often. So I appreciate it again. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your leadership in the industry. You know, how you show up on LinkedIn is super valuable. If you're not following Brian on LinkedIn, recommend that you do. He's bringing value to the industry. And then also sometime in this call, we'll talk about a new platform that Brian's rolling out called the Weekly Roadmap. He's been one of the most well-known, most effective, most successful leaders in the industry, and he's going to start providing a weekly roadmap. So we'll tell you more about that later in the call. So it is one day before my 60th birthday. We're
Wow.
doing this on June 12th. June 13th is a big day for me, hitting the big 6-0. And
Wow.
what's new in the
Welcome,
industry?
welcome to the water, Dave. It's great over here. There's
Yeah.
nothing, it's I'm well past that number. So I can, if you want any insight, let me know after this call. I'd be glad to give you some, but it only
I'm
gets better, brother. It only gets better.
Oh, I'm all good with it. I mean, it's actually a birthday that, when I was younger, I was like, oh, it's kind of like embarrassed of my age, or I didn't, I just didn't like wear it with pride. And I feel like at 60, like I'm all good. I feel better than ever, and I'm excited about this next, halftime in life. But with that said, what are some of the big news items that both C-suite should be paying attention to, loan officers should be paying attention to, and then let's get into the big opportunities right now.
Yeah. So look, I think, look, there's a lot, as you know, because you talk about a lot of these topics often, there's a lot of things going on out there from the commission lawsuits and the real estate side of the business. Home builders continue to kill it. But probably the most dominant thing today that at least I'm kind of focused on with my clients and continues to drive the M&A side of it. I literally just got off a call to jump on with you from yet another client reaching out on an M&A opportunity, is higher for longer, right? You hear this phrase all the time. We know that the Fed, and I'm, for the audience purposes, I'm actually 8 hours ahead of David today. I'm actually in Galway, Ireland, taking this call. So I'm trying to watch my phone a little bit to see whether or not Chair Powell has commented. I know the CPI number came out, the consumer price index number came out flat today. The 10-year has been rallying down from, we had crested above 440, actually hit 450 for a while. Now we're back to 426. Clearly, the market liked whatever data they've seen. We'll get the dot plots later today in the chairman's conference. But no matter what happens in that number, and no matter what happens over the balance of this week, and I suspect for the next couple of months, 2024 is not going to work out the way a lot of people thought it was going to work out at the beginning of 2024, where there was a lot of commentary of 6 Fed rate cuts and maybe back in the mid to low fives by the end of the year. all of those kinds of things. So I think, Dave, and this is not, this is not the uplifting part of our conversation. I think, but to your point, there's opportunity buried in here no matter what. I think we're going to have higher and maybe still materially higher rates than most people thought at the beginning of the year through the balance of this year. And, it's always dawns on me when we get to June, like we are now, we're almost middle of June. We've only got about 3-4 more months of 2024, if you think about it, right? Because as you're starting to take applications in October, that's almost, a good portion of that'll be 2025 business. And so we're running out of year. We're running out of year with higher rates than we would have maybe otherwise certainly hoped for, but maybe expected at the beginning of the year. So the whole concept of higher for longer, I think, has real challenges in the industry. And we're seeing, be a little careful with some of the data that we're seeing in the marketplace. And I'm not knocking on anybody, but I keep seeing data that suggests that, only 60% of mortgage bankers lost money in the first quarter. But that's only 60% of a sample of only 325 firms. And as you float around, as I do, inside a lot of companies, talking to a lot of companies, I can assure you the companies losing money in the first quarter is materially higher than 60% on a cash basis. And I think a lot of companies bet that rates would be lower by now and certainly lower in the second half of this year. I just don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen enough to make a material difference. That's the bad news. The good news is that listings are up in most markets. We're beginning to see capitulation on the listing side. And what I mean by that is sellers who have to sell or for whatever combination of reasons need to sell are coming back into the market. And we're seeing in some markets, you're seeing listings up 20, 30%, not maybe on a national basis yet, but you're seeing listings come up. You're seeing home prices moderate a little bit. And if we get any kind of rate run here, we could see some decent volume towards the second half of the year, but likely not enough to make a difference. So that's a long answer to your short question, but that's my perspective.
All right, let me share a few thoughts I'm giving in the market and then give your impressions on that. And then we'll do another circle of whatever it is, news, data points. So I attended the Mastermind Summit last week in Las Vegas. I facilitated a executive panel with the CEO of Success Mortgage and the chairman of the advocacy for the MBA, Owen Lee. I had the president of Churchill, Matt Clark. I had Tim Elkins, who is the chief production officer for Prime Lending, which, by the way, formerly kind of interesting. He was the chief technology officer for several years. So I love that story and what that means to the industry. Someone that's process driven, someone that is a good leader becomes chief production officer. I think that's a pretty cool story. And it kind of tails into my advice to the industry. And then I had Ryan Grant, who's one of the co-founders of Neo. But guys, here was my takeaway from the time I spent is that you can win in this market. And there are great operators are winning in this market. And I've interviewed enough top producers that are, 20 basis points, 40 basis points in more gross margin than their peers. They've got 10 to 20% higher conversion rates. They're highly profitable. They're gaining market share. And so tell me what you think of this, Brian. I think you're going to agree. Shayla Gifford said something in her keynote, and Sean Benoshian said something in his keynote that's just like, I can't get it out of my head. And so Shayla had this metaphor, are you a leader? Or are you a helper? And I think a lot of branch managers, I think a lot of producing managers are helpers and they're not leaders. And then I look at the most successful loan officers, hey, are you a helper? Like I help facilitate a mortgage transaction. Are you like a leader that understands that consumer's problems, is delivering them solutions, is stepping into constructive tension in a productive way? I think it's a market where helpers lose market share and get crushed by leaders. So first of all, any thoughts on that metaphor? Are you a leader?
First
Are
of
you
all,
a helper?
Yeah, I haven't heard the metaphor before, but I completely embrace it. Look, and you could use a lot of different phrases for leader, maybe. But you know, what I see in folks like Shayla and Shant and folks like that I'm aware of, there was an article, and forgive me, you might know the guy's name. He's apparently in Scotsman this year, he was the top unit producer in the industry as well, which is neither one of those two folks. But, you know, he was talking about his strategies. And in short, what I see in both of those leaders that you just mentioned, and what I think to some degree Shayla's saying, to be a leader, you have to be granular. You have to really be a pro. You have to really have a sense of your own skill set, what it takes, what's really going on in the market, and you have to embrace all of those things, and you're not coasting. You know, when I watch Shant and some of his posts, and I've seen Shayla before speak and others, these are folks who get up every day and are just committed to this business at a level and a sense of intensity. You know, Shant, I read somewhere the other day, I don't know if it was one of his interviews, he has like 3 sales meetings a week with his team.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's not, hey, let's push them out the door and hope it all works out, right? Hey, I hire you, Dave, as an originator, and now you work in my branch. Good luck, Dave, right? It strikes me that leaders are focused on what it takes. They go out, you may need help. I may need to be a helper of you as a branch manager, but first I need to be a leader. And I need to show you, tell you, and coach you to what it really takes to be successful in this business. And if I'm not doing that, then okay, I'm a helper and I'm going to answer your questions when asked, but that's not leadership.
Yeah, no, that does not gain market share in this
Exactly.
market. So for anyone listening to this, I actually did a rant on this on LinkedIn. Every Monday morning on LinkedIn, I do a post that is, specifically targeted to producing managers. I try to put my hat on like I'm the industry's chief production officer and I want to speak to all my producing managers. So just know every Monday on LinkedIn, that's what I'm doing. Now, there was another thing. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions around this one. So Shant did the keynote on the second day of the event. He was the closing keynote, and it was a 30-minute presentation. It was like a TED Talk, and he built it around these 2 beliefs that he had and 4 principles. So he had 2 beliefs, 4 principles, and then he built a 30-minute keynote presentation, and it was like powerful, because they were his authentic beliefs. They were, these are the principles that I'm executing on. And again, he's the #1 loan officer in America from a production standpoint with G rate. He's killing it. He's gaining market share and he's winning. So
And he has a team that's killing it, right? He doesn't leave.
Well, because he's got these
Right.
core values
Right.
and these principles. So here, I'm going to throw this at you. I know you're, kicking off this weekly roadmap, and in some ways you're like doing a role that you've had before. I mean, you've been the chief production officer of some of the largest sales forces in the history. No, the largest sales force in the history of the industry.
Oh, I think we might have been #2, but we were pretty productive.
Okay, well, whatever. I mean,
But
when you were at Countrywide, weren't you #1? The
no,
largest.
Wells Fargo still outdid us in number of people.
Okay.
We may have outproduced them, but who's counting?
Okay, one of the top 2 sales
I have a lot
forces.
of respect for those guys as well. So I'm not knocking anybody here.
Yeah, okay. But with that said, with this weekly roadmap that you're bringing, what are, you can list 1 or 2 values that you bring to leadership and any principles that you want to share with everyone right now.
Yeah. So if I can start with the principles and just respond to your comments about Shant and what he did, right? I mean, here's the thing about Shant. He has a view. He has a plan. He executes on the plan religiously with discipline over and over, right? This is wash, rinse, repeat. This is, the reason he meets with his people 3 times a week. He doesn't leave things to chance of just kind of hoping it all works out. And I'm going to hire you and you're going to do great because you're on Shant's team. He wants to make you a better producer, a better whatever you do on his team, and make you more productive. And he doesn't leave it to chance. So I'd say that's the #1 issue, Dave. And to be honest, if anybody's working for Shant, they don't need to subscribe. I'd love to have them, love to have Shant come on as a speaker. But they don't need what I'm going to offer on the weekly roadmap, because they're getting it from their boss 3 times a week and probably daily as well, if they, you know, are anywhere around him, because I've been around him and kind of watch his approach to life in general. What I'm trying to offer is for all of those players, mortgage bankers, reps who work for banks, mortgage broker reps, all the above. If you're not getting that kind of coaching at least once a week from your boss, from your branch manager, from your, you know, you do the thing on Mondays, Dave, for producing branch managers, which I think is a really tough job in this business.
It's 2 minutes. I mean, I'm doing
I
it.
got it. I got it.
Boom.
I got it. But it's 2 minutes that most of your audience aren't getting, in my opinion. And look, if you go back, and I'll keep this brief. If you go back 20 years plus, most of our managers in our industry were non-producing branch managers. They were coaches, they were show how, they were sit down and build a plan with your sales force and go out and make calls with them and show how and tell how and iterate and make them better professionals. About 20 years ago, the industry changed to predominantly producing managers, which I think is a really tough job, none the least of which most producing managers make 10 times on their own production what they make on their reps production. And so that tends to focus the mind. And then people, because we're remote now in many cases, people are not around each other. These concept of meetings have kind of gone by the wayside. So very quickly, the weekly roadmap, which is one word, by the way, it's, you know, it's like in the South, you say, if you want to know what you're going to eat for lunch, you say, what you want to eat, right? That's one word, right? No knock on my Southern friends. I worked in the South and they taught me that word. Weekly roadmap is meant to be a 1 hour live coaching session with commentary about the market, speakers like you and others that I have lined up, Ivy Zellman, who's one of the top research analysts on Wall Street as it relates to housing, those kinds of things, folks that are, real players in the industry that your local branch manager is never going to bring to it. But most importantly, here's what I know: 70% of apps in the business tend to be taken on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I'm trying to prepare people on a Friday morning, 9 a.m. every Friday morning, Pacific time, or 1 hour session, update on the market, really current in terms of data that was released that morning, 20 minutes from typically a speaker, somebody that I'd love to have a Shant or somebody come on and talk about their strategies. And then the last 20 minutes of the call are really about sales strategies, techniques, ideas, those kinds of things, and maybe a little motivational, and maybe a little ass kicking as well, in terms of pushing people kind of out the door to execute, right? You can teach people how to do it, but then they've got to go execute in that process. And we've also built a community site where people can link to each other. We have an app, a weekly roadmap app that helps people connect with each other and pull down additional information. I'm sharing curated information every day with this group. People, if they subscribe, people will get our weekly newsletter as part of the process. And so I'm trying to supplant a little bit the sales meeting that maybe you're not getting in your organization, but it's also portable. So if you decide to change companies, you get to take it with you, right? You don't, if you have a good situation today, congratulations. If you're not getting that kind of coaching from your company or your boss today, this is meant to help do that and help do exactly what Shant's doing with his team. It's just not 3 times a week. I'd love to do it 3 times a week, but it's pretty complicated. And people will get, if you're a sales manager, you're going to get a deck that you could turn around and use with your folks. And it's a subscription service. And as I think we mentioned to you, Dave, for any of your folks, and we'll get you a code to do this, they'd be able to get it at a discounted rate of $79 a month, which is less than a Starbucks coffee a day. And hopefully we can provide better information for you. We'll provide some information in the chat session later here on that, but that's really what we're doing. We're trying to provide value, coaching, ideas, strategies, and the values I have is that if people focus and invest in themselves, make themselves better professionals at what they do, utilize tools like you provide at MortgageCoach and Trust Engine, focus on data, be maniacal about being a professional, I think you can take immense advantage in this market, even in a down market. The market will come back and you should kill it, right, in that process. So That's really what we're trying to do.
So guys, there will be a link. You're watching this in YouTube down below. There is a discount for Trust Engine and Mortgage Coach executives and mortgage professionals. Brian is bringing this to market at $149, and the discount that he provides to both Trust Engine and Mortgage Coach clients is $79. So it's a significant
Month, by the way.
yeah,
Month
per month.
In the first couple of weeks, calls are free. If you decide to pull out, it didn't cost you anything.
Well, I know it's going to be valuable. Congratulations on launching that. So let's go back and forth on a couple principles and values that I think the industry needs to have to win in this higher for longer market. And here's my thesis, and tell me if you agree with this. First of all, this is a market where the best get better and pick up market share. Like, this is the market where the shot separates a little bit more. And I do believe everybody can do that. And you gotta do fundamentals. And I do believe with the NAR settlement coming into play, that's going to create a better opportunity for the real pro, for the loan officer that's not just a helper helping facilitate transactions, but the loan officer that's a leader, and they're showing families how to build net worth with real estate. They're really delivering advice that has tangible value. Any thought, like, guys, and by the way, anyone listening, that's a principle, that's a belief. And if you have that principle and you have that belief and you execute at a really high level, I think you're going to separate yourself. Any thoughts on that? And then I would love for you to also share another principle or strategy. Like, let's give them a couple value points to focus on.
Thoughts on that is, if for no other reason, and this is a tragic stat, somewhere between 80 and 90,000 originators have left the business over the last 18 months. So if you're still standing and doing well, you're in a market that is shrinking in terms of the number of folks feeding off the market. And as the market comes back, you stand to take an immense share gain on a go-forward basis. In terms of principles, one of the principles you and I have discussed in previous calls a little bit is using data to drive your business. Who are you calling on and why? And you mentioned a couple of times, Dave, the realtor lawsuit settlement. I think there's going to be not a lot fewer. There's going to be materially fewer realtors on a go-forward basis, but also many of the buy side may well move into our business, into the mortgage business, because of dual comp opportunities and other related pieces that are out there. And so along that line, people have an opportunity, in my view. You have fewer competitors to the degree that you are focused on origination strategies that bring you closer to the consumer, use data to find out referral sources who are actually selling real estate, not just in real estate. Those things, that the concept of starting with data instead of the blind squirrel finds an occasional nut sales approach, right? Where we just kind of go out and we start calling on people and hope it all works out. There's so much data available. I know your organization provides a lot of this as well, that you can use to really tailor your approach in the marketplace to be a real pro. And if you have schooled yourself and you have specific strategies, the gentleman that I mentioned before, that was, I think, the top unit producer in the industry last year, at least according to Scotsman's, and there's a lot of those lists out there. One of his strategies was a strategy I used as an originator, and he closed over 1,000 transactions last year, which was doing educational seminars for realtors, home buyers, and other referral sources on a non-stop basis. He's establishing himself as a superior knowledge person in the space to people who sell real estate, and helping them learn how to use finance to sell more houses. And then who are they going to call? Of course, they're going to call him, right? And so I did that. I had one time made myself approved by the state I was in New Hampshire, to issue continuing ed credits to realtors by putting together an 8-hour seminar to help them get their continuing ed credits every year. I'd put 400 people in a room and talk to them for 8 hours. You'd have to make 2,500 sales calls to get that amount of face time with people who sold real estate. Very efficient model. So those are the kinds of strategies we're going to talk about on the weekly roadmap. And by the way, the weekly roadmap, MAP, Mortgage Advisory Partners, is the name of my company. And that's how we got to MAP. So it's a weekly roadmap is one word. It's a verb, by the way. It's what you do. It's not a thing.
I love that. I love that. So, hey, I'm going to play off that. I interviewed Mose Gatling yesterday. I don't know if you know Mose,
I
but
do. Yeah.
for
I know
anyone
who
who
she
doesn't,
is.
yeah, top producer in the Vegas market. She is now the senior vice president with New American Funding. And so she kills it and very successful. I'm going to give you guys some phrases that she said that I just took notes. I thought they were really good. Before I do that, she was talking about like her top strategy right now is doing how to buy a home in 2024 workshops at builder projects. So in Vegas, she's like, there's a lot of builder projects. She actually, here's a headline for you guys. I thought it was pretty good. She calls it the real deal on buying a home in 2024 with Mose. So I just gave you a killer headline and you got an idea from Brian and I, like go to builders and do it on site at one of their properties. Builders dig that, like, oh, I'm going to do a workshop and I'm going to bring first-time home buyers. The real deal on buying a home. So Mose, that was an idea from Mose yesterday. But here's two other things that she said that I really dug. She's like, I've been telling my realtors, don't refer people to me to get a pre-qual. Like, don't use the word pre-qual. And I was kind of like, what? And she goes, yeah, she goes, stop saying pre-qual and start saying home buyer assessment. She made a whole case around that phrasing of going from, a pre-qual to a home buyer assessment. And she was saying, like, I'm having more conversations. They're richer conversations. There's more value exchange. Another little phrase that I got from her. And by the way, I think if she's not number one, she's one of the top down payment assistance lenders in the state. I actually did an interview with her in the CEO of Down Payment Resources recently. By the way, if anyone listening, go check out Down Payment Resources. They power all the down payment resource programs for both Zillow and Redfin. It's an incredible platform. But Mose is like, when I'm talking to a consumer, I don't call them down payment assistance program. She goes, I feel like that's projecting poverty.
Yes.
And she said, I refer to them as how to leverage someone else's money. So and again, you're hearing this from one of the top mortgage professionals in the country at doing these. And then that made me think, you know what? Mose, with this NAR settlement, she's going to be bringing more value to realtors than the typical LO that's doing pre-quals, being a helper, doesn't even want to do down payment resource or down payment assistance programs. And if they did, they don't talk about it, right? And I was just thinking, you know what? Mose is going to kill it. So Brian, any thoughts on all that?
Yeah. So let me see if I get this straight, Dave. We're in sales and you're saying words matter.
I've heard that before.
Right. There's a revelation for the day, right? I mean, think about that, right? I mean, and she's dead on, right? I don't know her personally. I know who she is, and she's obviously got a great reputation in the marketplace out there. But the idea of calling on builders, I talk to reps about this all the time, and I hear, well, I called on some builders and they kind of threw me out because they got an in-house lender and then they got a backup lender. And look, the very best referral source I ever had as an originator, if you called on him, he literally come out and tore you apart. He would make comments on your suit, on your tie, on how you looked, and you were funny looking and you were too young, and he'd throw you out of the office. And he would do that the first 4 or 5 times you called on him because he only wanted people to do business with who would show up when he was yelling, right? And most people, after they got yelled at the first 1 or 2 times and told to get out, they wouldn't come back. And his answer was, look, when I've got a deal in the crux and I need you and things are a little tense, I need you to be there. And so that's how he used to measure people. But I see people do this all the time. Look, it's the home builders who have the listings. It's the home builders who are selling houses. The country is 5 million houses short. The future for home building is unbelievably bright. Some portion of your sourcing of your business has to include home building. I have a client that has a top rep. Last year went from 0. He was a corporate guy went back into origination in 1 year, closed 48 million, all with home builder business. All with home builder business by going to a home builder, explaining what he could do, the product set that he had, how he would, take care of their business, and got thrown out 9 out of 10 times and built a business of 48 million bucks a year in the first year that he was back on the street. Right? Persistence, selling, words matter. How she phrases that, how she packages that, it just differentiates her.
I love it. I love it. So Brian, let's make sure we give folks a reminder. This weekly roadmap it's now available, guys. Get in, get early. First 2 weeks are free. It's $79 a month. If you are a mortgage coach or trust engine customer and you use our link and our code, which will be down below, as we continue to promote this, we'll have some type of a code. Anything specific that that you're going to cover in some of the first classes of first sales meetings?
This will seem a little self-serving, and it's not, but the short version is my very first inaugural speaker is some guy that I know, Dave Savage.
Oh, that's right. I am your first guy.
You are my first guy. And so, yeah, look, we'll rehash some of this, but not all of it. I've got some lists. I'm going to turn the tables and I'm going to interview Dave Savage going the other way. So that should be fun to get some of those ideas, that'll pop out of that. But I do think, look, every week now we have data because the Fed is clearly data dependent. And so every morning, and the reason it's at 9 o'clock on Friday mornings, West Coast time, is so that most data releases are 8:30 a.m., 5:30 in the morning, my time on the West Coast. So I have a chance to digest the data, have that information. That'll be part of every week's call. We're going to have Dave Savage from MortgageCoach on the very first call. We're going to be releasing here in the next 3 or 4 days a list of additional speakers going forward so people can anticipate this. And oh, by the way, if you miss the call and you're subscribed, you'll have access to a community site where you can draw it down and listen to it as a podcast. So we'll be putting that out on an ongoing basis. You'll pick up our weekly newsletter free of charge as well. That'll come out every Friday, which is filled with information. We got almost 2,000 subscribers there, and people really tell me that it's we don't write it, but we publish it. And you're going to get some merchandise from us eventually as well that we'll send out to kind of help along the day. So every week, some coaching, a little butt kicking, some motivation, some great ideas and strategies, some updates on the market, and we'll see where it goes from there.
So anyone listen to this, if there's topics you want Brian and I to cover, this is a monthly thing that we're doing. He's going to lean into our community and bring leadership, data-driven leadership. Brian, before we wrap, are there any, when you think between now and 2 to 4 weeks when we do the next one, anything that this community should be looking out for, or any, just forward-casting thoughts that you have?
Yeah, look, by the time we do this again, we'll have another jobs report, right? So the first Friday of every month, we get the non-farm payrolls report, which between it and CPI that came out today, particularly core CPI that the Fed tends to focus on, any of this data, watch for the 10-year treasury auctions that are happening every month, watch for the non-farm payrolls, watch for what's called the JOLTS report, which is job openings, right? And again, I hate to pray for bad news, but we're looking for stuff that suggests less inflation. We get less inflation, we get better interest rates, and we see a Fed that could then begin to lower rates. Generally today, most people believe that there's no chance we see a Fed rate cut before the September Fed meeting, but this data along the way, confirmatory data that suggests lower inflation, is the key for our future, key to lower rates. And of course, we're in an election year, so that's going to factor in here as well. But data, and particularly anything that suggests lower inflation.
And I'm going to close out with data that I want every mortgage professional to really obsess over. If we're in mortgage, guys, we're in the biggest game in history. Like this line right here is debt. And look at how much debt in America has gone up since 2020. I mean, it's mind-boggling, actually. There's never been more credit card debt in America. There's never been more equity lines in America.
Student
We have
debt.
the most loans against 401ks we've ever seen in the history of America. And usually, like if you're a mortgage pro, you're like, oh, this means debt consol refis. And by the way, it does mean debt consol refis. They're in your database and you're missing them. But it also means purchase opportunities. It also means move up opportunities. It also means helping renters go from renting to owning by looking at their full balance sheet. Guys, this is America's balance sheet. There's never been more equity in America. That means, the people that have equity can help their kids get into homeownership faster. So when you're helping a family, like look at, hey, they got college age kids, they have equity. You should be talking about, hey, maybe you should help your kids house hack and buy their first home earlier. Like if you're really looking at you're like, I'm a liability manager. I am managing the full balance sheet of the consumers I serve. And you're meeting with clients, you can help them redistribute that. Like I'm hearing stories all the time of a move up buyer that didn't want to move up because they had a 3% loan, but you know what? They had car loans, they had credit card debt, they had
Right,
all this, and they
right.
had shit tons of equity. And a loan officer was able to say, hey, you know what? You can have that move up home. You could,
Reallocate what you're paying to a house versus some of this other debt, and you're ahead, right?
yeah, and when you look at and they believe that real estate's going to go up, and when you start forecasting real estate appreciation over 5 years, that bigger home starts accelerating your wealth creation. So that's my closing thought, guys. There's never
Dave,
been more
Dave,
opportunity.
are you suggesting that true pros out there should be a mortgage coach?
Yeah, well,
I couldn't,
I think they should,
no, seriously.
whatever you want to call it. But I
Yes.
mean, liability advisor. Don't be a helper that facilitates a transaction. Be a leader that looks for opportunities to help accelerate your client's net worth, and you'll win.
And remember Mosey's words matter. How you
Yeah,
phrase it,
yeah.
how you position it, how you position your own knowledge and your own professionalism really matters. Take a look at yourself. Would somebody get a mortgage from you? Would you get a mortgage from you, right? Do you have enough knowledge? Do you feel like you're as prepared as you need to be in today's market to be that value add?
All right, guys. Hopefully you got value from this. Brian, I am super grateful for you. Congratulations on launching your new platform. There is a link down below, everybody. Make sure you check it out. Take care, my brother. And this is a wrap. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.